Hi! So the other day on Rhett and Link's show Good Mythical Morning, which I'll link to in the description, they had an episode about sibling rivalry. And it got me thinking about my interactions with my brother growing up. My brother, he's younger than me, but pretty much for his entire life has been bigger than I am. Except right at the beginning, of course. A little baby Dan was not bigger than me. But it didn't take long for him to overtake me in size. That ended up causing a lot of problems for us growing up, because whenever we would argue about stuff, I liked to argue with words, and he liked to argue with fists. And that was definitely a problem because he was also a major troublemaker. He used to do a lot of things that would get him in trouble if he ever got caught doing them. And he would always leave enough evidence so that my parents knew whatever thing he wasn't supposed to be doing had been done, but not enough that it was obvious that he had been the one to do it. The only evidence usually that he had actually done it is that he did that kind of stuff and I didn't. When my parents would find out about this stuff, they'd say, like, who did this? Who did this? You know, just tell the truth. Maybe it won't get punished as much. But my brother would always refuse to answer. And so what would happen, I think this is mostly my stepdad's decision, but what would happen is we'd both get punished. The idea being, at least then the person who did something wrong is being punished, and maybe the other one, obviously me, would be more inclined to stop the person next time. The problem is I couldn't stop him. He was much bigger than I was, and he liked the punching. I don't so much like punching, and I'm not as good at it. So it's not like I could hold him back if I saw him doing something wrong, and half the time I wouldn't even see it. And so my only other recourse would be to, like, tell on him, but of course then my dad would say, don't be a tattletale. Well, so what am I supposed to do? I don't know. So a lot of times my brother would do stuff and get us both in trouble. He would never admit it. And here's the thing. So we'd be, like, say we'd be sent to our room as a punishment. He and I are in the room, parents nowhere near, cannot hear us, we're talking. The only person that can hear the interaction is him and me. And I know he did it because I saw him do it. Whatever it was that he did. Like, I would have seen him do it. And it's one thing when he says to my parents, oh no, it was Dave. But, like, he would say this stuff to me. Like, just me. Like, no, you did it. Clearly I didn't do it. I watched you do it. Obviously, I know I didn't. Like, it's like he didn't know how lying worked. You can't lie to me about what I did, but he would still try. Needless to say, I had some very frustrating interactions with my brother growing up, and there was often nothing I could do about it. One day, I had an idea of something I could do about it. We were sent to bed early, again because of something Dan had done, so I decided I was not going to stand for this. I was going to protest my punishment. I'm not going to bed. I'm sleeping on the floor. If I can't convince my parents of my innocence, then I don't deserve a bed, was my thinking. And so I laid down on the floor, and I decided I was going to stay there all night as a protest to prove my innocence. Problem with that is my brother decided to join me. Dan, I told him, you can't protest your punishment by laying on the floor when you did it. It's your fault. You're supposed to be getting punished. It doesn't make any sense. But I swear, sometimes that kid was smarter than I gave him credit for, because my protest wouldn't work. My protest can't work if it relies on only the innocent person laying on the floor, and he does it too. So we both ended up sleeping in our beds that night because there was no point in either of us sleeping on the floor. But I figured something out now that I'm a little more grown up. It started actually when I was around 17. I started to notice Dan wasn't just this dumb, insensitive lunkhead like I thought he was. I realized he was actually kind of sensitive. He just hid his emotions a lot. And he really listened to you when you talked to him. Because I remember once, so I had gone off to school, and I only came home once a month. And I remember once on one of my trips home, I was talking about how after graduation, I wanted to go on with some friends on a biking trip across Europe. I wanted to bike across Europe, camp places, things like that, just be outdoors a lot. And he bought me a little Leatherman multi-tool because he thought it would be useful when I was camping and for like repairing my bike and things like that, to have a nice little, multi-tool thing that I could carry in my pocket. And it was actually a really good idea. It never would have even occurred to me. If he had told me the same story, or the same plans, I probably wouldn't have thought to get him something like that, because it wouldn't have occurred to me, one, that he needed it, or two, to get it. So I realized he was actually listening and really thinking about the gifts. It was really nice of him. So a couple years ago, he had a kid. Well, his fiance had a kid. He was there, I guess. And I've seen him with his daughter a few times now, and there is a real caring and sensitivity. It's the first time I've ever seen him not hiding his feelings is when he's taking care of his daughter. I realized he's actually a pretty caring, nice guy. With all the troubles that I had with him growing up, I'm glad to have him as my brother, which my parents always said was going to be true, and it's annoying that they're right. So that's my thoughts about my brother. Bye.